Morning, everyone. How are we doing today? We've got some really fun stuff to go over here, talking about the mystery at Blind Frog Ranch Season 2, guys. We're brought by blindfrogranchoutpost.com, which if you guys have not checked it out, it is up in Vernal, Utah. We actually have a beautiful store up there. We're doing tours out to the ranch. It's awesome. If you haven't checked it out, I want you guys to go to that QR code right there, or just go to blindfrogranchoutpost.com. You can also hit us up on Instagram. There's the link right there. And you can check us out, of course, and stay up with us and get notices and specials. We're always doing something cool. We're always doing something special for all of our fans on Facebook. Guys, we've got a really special episode today. Last night's show was amazing. We're going to recap quite a few things, but we're also going to really get into some nitty gritty as to what's going on up in the Uintah Basin and talk to some people that, oh man, such a wealth of knowledge and information today. We're going to have Chris Bartell. We're going to have James Keenan, and we've got a special guest that I can't reveal his entire identity yet. We're going to talk to here in just a couple of minutes. So we've got some amazing things happening. I just want to show you guys real quick. As always, every week we have a special product, featured product from the Blind Frog Ranch Outpost. If you guys watch the show, you know Duane, his favorite beer is Blue Moon. And of course, we could not come up with a product line without coming up with a pint glass. So we have a Blind Frog Ranch official BFR pint glass. And if you guys want to grab one of those guys right now, 15% off. Use code Blue Moon Pint on checkout to get that 15% off. And now let's get right to some of the fun stuff. So, guys, this one is really interesting. Last night we had some crazy things happening. We've got very, very unique elements being found on the ranch. You guys know that, there was a big push for getting to the box. There was a big push for seeing what's in the box. I personally don't care if they were able to drag the box completely out or if they broke it apart and got into it. That's not what's important to me. What's important to me is, what did they find in that box? And they found something unique. It wasn't the gold that everybody was expecting, but they did find something unique, right? And that's that gallium, really, really interesting stuff. And with that, we've got all kinds of questions. What is it for? What is it used for? What can it be used for? And with that, we actually have a contact that has a very unique perspective on what that element can be. And so I'm going to bring him on first. We've got a special guest. Today, we're going to call him Agent Robert or Agent Bob. Here is the basics about him. So Bob was a Border Patrol agent out of Arizona, currently assigned to the Tucson sector. SOD-MRT, for those of you that don't know, that's Special Operation Detachment and Mobile Response Team. And that was the flight task unit he was attached to. So he served as an agent / paramedic. Bob has a combined 30 years in public safety, military, and law enforcement. Currently, Bob participates in Counter-Narco-Terrorism Task Force as a crewman, and he's participated in countless rescues, 911 calls for both agent and Border Patrol missions while a member of the Border Patrol, and has deployed on a range of events, including civil disorder and natural disasters. Now, 20 years of those 30 years of his service, or 20 plus years, I should say, is as a paramedic, where his expertise come into play today. So what I'm going to do here real quick, guys, is bring Bob on. Now, because there are active things going on in Border Patrol that may jeopardize missions and may jeopardize people and family members. Bob's not going to show his face today, but nevertheless, he's willing to come on and talk to us. I'm bringing him on right now. Bob, if you're there, can you say hello to us?
How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing fantastic, Bob. I really appreciate you coming online today and talking to us about what's going on here. First and foremost, thank you for your service. It's amazing that you've been involved as long as you have. But let's jump right to the topic here real quick. You've been a paramedic, correct?
Yes, sir. I have for quite a while.
And in that position, you're privy to all sorts of information that maybe the average person, and certainly even the average medical professional, don't necessarily know, or at least employ on a day-to-day basis, because you deal mostly with triage and full-on emergency situations. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, paramedics and first responders in general just deal with, different types of injuries than, they do in kind of your average healthcare setting. Everything that we do, is kind of just organizing, chaos into something that makes sense and benefits the patient. So we have a lot of training. I mean, we go through a lot of pharmacology, and and I was with the fire department prior to being at the border patrol, so I went through a lot of chemical and biological weapons training and hazardous materials training and technical rescue training and stuff like that. So the knowledge I got is just from going to all these different trainings and stuff, and you get to meet a lot of different people. You get to hear a lot of different perspectives on things, and I think it shapes you as well with your perspective. The more the more knowledge you get, the old saying is kind of like the wisdom comes with it as well. And over the years, I just pay attention to stuff. That's it was drilled into me from an early age in the military. It was always pay attention to detail, and I tend to do that. And so the medicine side has always been a passion of mine. Helping people and healing people has always been a passion, and I've always looked for something bigger and better to do it. And over the years, I kind of just saw that Western medicine it's not everything it's cracked up to be. Like plenty of times I've held someone's hand, and it's done a lot more than anything I've had in a bag or a drug box or anything else. And so you come to learn that there's more to things out there, and it's always been a quest of mine. It's just looking for this stuff.
So I love that, by the way, and I happen to very much agree with you. Medicine is not always what you think it is, and there's a combination of things that come into play. And I'm sure everybody watching right now is kind of scratching their head a little bit about, why are you guys going into health? Why are you guys going into medicine? Why are you guys talking about paramedic stuff? And what is this? How does this tie into anything? So let me bridge that gap for you guys real quick, because I've got some interesting things to talk to Bob about here, and for you guys to hear. Last night, the most important takeaway from the show was they found something, and they found something that was completely unexpected, and that is gallium. And gallium, they're guessing right now on the show, why would it be kept there? Why would they be so secretive about that? How did it even get there? What the heck is the use? Why everything, right? Well, here's what we want to touch on that you have some perspective on, Bob. You're familiar with gallium and how it can be used outside of the obvious of in electronics, or as a conductor, or as like a typical metal, right?
Absolutely.
Tell me your thoughts. What do you think gallium's value could be?
Well, immediately I didn't get to watch the episode last night. I got up early this morning and watched it. I ordered it on Amazon, and excited to see it. And the lead up to it was amazing. Wanting to know what was in the box was great. And so as the show progressed on, and they cracked open that first rock, and started trying to figure out what this was, I thought, like, why are ancient people, or why is anyone burying a box, in a cave, with, such extreme caution almost, or like, I don't even know what the words would be to describe it, like safeguard for the most part. Whatever it was very important in there. And then, once it was revealed that it was gallium, I started thinking, well, why are people burying gallium in there? And
Right.
Like you said, the obvious thing was, electronics and conductivity, but there's also really other interesting health stuff going on with it as well. And, one of the things was, you know, they've used gallium in the past for low level noise amplification. There's all kinds of weird stuff that's associated with it as well. But the thing that really piqued my interest in was the health side of things. So my father growing up was in nuclear medicine, and they do gallium studies, right? So they inject people with gallium, and that gallium will go to, you know, certain areas of the body that, you know, is having inflammation and different problems associated with it. And they can do imaging studies with it and, you know, see what's going on. But the other interesting thing that I stumbled upon this morning right off the bat was that they can use it to accelerate partial thickness wounds and wound repair. And it has coagulation stuff going on as well, which is very intriguing as well. So, you know, from a trauma standpoint, from a paramedic standpoint, you know, that's always been a concern for us, because that's one of the leading causes of, you know, battlefield death is exsanguination, you know, bleeding out, you know. So if there's something that could help people, whether it's, you know, through, you know, use of that, you know, liquid metal in some form or fashion, I have no idea, but I can tell you there's something profound to it. And
the medical side of it is very interesting, because I mean, the thought process here is that this was all hidden by Aztecs, right? And who's to say that gold is the only thing that they, you know, of course, gold isn't the only thing that they held precious. And you know, whoever put it down there obviously held this precious for a reason. And what reason is that, right? There obviously weren't these kinds of electronics back then, though you would use it for conductivity and all that stuff. Although that's possible, maybe we just didn't know about it. I mean, again, so many questions, but the health aspect of it is so interesting. And
Bob,
absolutely. You actually, in you know, when we had a brief moment to talk before, said that you've seen experiments with gallium do some other crazy things. Tell me some more of the things that you had mentioned.
Well, yeah. So last night when they were, you know, experimenting, well, for me, it was this morning, but when they were experimenting with it, they were putting the iodine, I think it was the potassium iodine crystals, and it was separating itself. The properties of the substance was, you know, for one, that was amazing to watch it, you know, almost be alive as well. Right. So there's definitely something, you know, with it forming the crystals and stuff, which was pretty amazing as well, you know. So as I looked into it more and kind of, you know, started doing some digging on the health side of things, I wanted to see what was going on YouTube, see if anyone had really experimented with it. And lo and behold, I came across a guy that's, you know, using it. Same thing that Duane was doing. He had it, you know, the revelation that it was actually, you know, liquefying in his hand was pretty amazing. And as it went on, you could see that there were, as it, you know, it had to be cooled. It was stored in water. All of that stuff made sense. But there was a guy on YouTube. I can't remember what the link was. You can find it yourself. If you do a simple search for the gallium, you'll see the guy's making molds. He's, you know, making ice cube tray molds. He's hollowing out ping pong balls and squirting the gallium in the ping pong ball. And then when it coalesces and goes back to its normal temperature, he can break apart the ping pong ball and you have a solid sphere of gallium. And so that was very reminiscent of what, you know, kind of looked like those people were doing. So if they were boring holes in rocks and pouring gallium in there, what purpose could it be? Who knows? But there, like I said, I started looking into these videos and guys were doing all kinds of stuff. So then it turns out if you, you know, sand down a Coke can, a regular Coca-Cola can, and you
aluminum, right?
Yeah, so there's different reactions with different substances, and that's the thing that's going to be intriguing. So what they need to do is someone needs to actually look and see what reactions these make. It's almost like an alchemic, you know, kind of alchemy type reactions with some of this stuff. I would be willing to bet that since the Mayans and the Aztecs, you know, there's a lot of darker side to some of this stuff, right? They practice human sacrifices and stuff. It would be interesting to see how the gallium reacts to blood in a petri dish or something, to, you know, see those results and see what actually occurs with that. And maybe those are some of the answers.
if you already know about, the use with health and with people, like you said, your father was involved in some scenarios where they were actually injecting it, and we already know that it can, or at least we suppose that it aids in coagulation in blood. There could be some major implications of value,
Well, absolutely. And the other thing is too, is now, is the, you lead on to the previews of next week, right? Looking at the radioactive signatures that are being discovered as well.
Right.
Now, is there something going on with gallium and radiation? That's the secret to this all. Who knows? But that's something to definitely explore. Is the gallium radioactive? Is that what's causing, things to the electronic equipment to go haywire out there? And who knows? Those are all things worth exploring for sure.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, Bob, we only have limited time here, but man, I really, really appreciate the fact that you bring a completely different potential aspect of the value of this substance to us. In that, you know about the health potential.
The health potential is huge.
It opens up a whole new realm of perceived value, and that perceived value to an older civilization like the Aztecs also goes to show how advanced they may have been. I mean, this is very good stuff. But Bob, I want to thank you so very much for joining us. I'm sure you are going to be back because you have a wealth of information from all of your knowledge, both as a paramedic and working and serving us in the Border Patrol and law enforcement and so forth. I appreciate you taking the time out to join us, and I thank you so much.
You got it, Dave.
Join us again if we have the opportunity.
Absolutely, I would enjoy coming back. I mean, I think there's plenty of pieces to this gigantic puzzle, and I think there's a lot of people that have these individual pieces that can help Duane out and solve this mystery. And I'm all on board if there's something to do with helping people out from a health standpoint. I suffer from a lot of health problems myself, and I'll tell you, there's always been a quest for the fountain of life. I don't know if this is it, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I'll definitely be back on, Dave.
Very interesting. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate you so much. We'll talk again soon. All right, guys. I can't even tell you how exciting it is to talk about everything that's going on there. I know that there's a lot of chatter about, how they decided to pull the box out and that it wasn't going to work and all that good stuff. Like I said, I agree. I didn't think it was going to come out in a whole piece either. But that's not the important thing here. The important thing is we've gotten to some fun stuff, and they're finding things that they didn't expect to find. With that, I'm going to bring on our special guests today. We've got two gentlemen that have an incredible wealth of knowledge. You guys know the first gentleman as somebody that I already have been working with. You've seen him on the show almost every week, but we're talking about James Keenan right now. I'm about to bring him on. I need everyone to understand, if you don't know James outside of this show, he's an author, he's a researcher, he's a field investigator. He has a degree in interdisciplinary studies from University of California, Santa Barbara. His main curriculum was anthropology and archaeology. And he's conducted field work around the world, pieced together some history and some unexplainable things. He's written several fictional novels from a science-backed process, by the way. Those books are pretty amazing. And there's paranormal components to it. Prior to his writing, he had a career in law enforcement, private investigation, spanned over 20 years. This gentleman is the real deal. He has been a guest on numerous television shows, podcasts, radio hosts. We are lucky to have him on with us on the regular, but today we're really going to dig a little bit more deeper into some of what he knows. So with that, I'd like to welcome James Keenan. How you doing, James?
Hey, Dave. Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Listen, James, I know you're a pretty humble guy, but I want to toot your horn for just a second for you, because everyone out there, you need to know, I know nothing in comparison to this gentleman. If you haven't seen him speak at one of the conferences, at a MUFON event, at one of the many places that he's actually put out some phenomenal information, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, in that James knows your stuff. You're the real deal, and I appreciate you. So,
thanks for having me on again.
Very, very well. I'm glad to do that. Okay, real quick, everybody, if you're not following him, follow him. There's a link down there. James, we're going to talk a little bit today about what went on the show, but you've got some history in working with the next guest that we're bringing on, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so I'm not gonna make everybody wait too much longer. I'm gonna go ahead and bring him on. So here's who we're bringing on right now. Christopher Bartel, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking USAF vet, Department of Energy, Pro Force, BAASS. I mean, we're talking 20 years of security law enforcement professional. And of course, you all know him from Skinwalker Ranch from 2000 to 2006 and 8. He's a pathfinder. He's a photographer. He's got a list a mile long of everything that he's done. We're going to now bring on Chris Bartel. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Chris, you and James have worked together. You guys both have names that speak for themselves. I feel kind of almost crazy trying to introduce you guys because I feel like everybody knows you. But when it comes to Blind Frog, we've got many new fans that may not know a lot about, your history with Skywalker or with Skinwalker. But you've been in this area studying all of this phenomenon for quite some time, have you not?
Yes, since 2010.
Awesome. And guys, if you want to learn a little bit more about Chris, please follow Chris on his website. You see it at the bottom of the screen there, Chris Bartel. So now, guys, here's what I want to do. You guys were able to hear what we just heard from Bob. Agent Bob, we'll call him, has a tremendous and vast experience on the health side of things with triage and all that stuff. He had an interesting take on that element that was found on the ranch yesterday in yesterday's episode, and that's gallium, right? I mean, there's so many ways that you can go with this, and I just want real quick just a little bit of an insight from either of you. What do you think about finding gallium there? What do you think the significance is?
Yeah, it's interesting. Recently, within the last 8 years, they found liquid mercury under Teotihuacan in Mexico. And, most of the anthropologists and archaeologists believe that it was for ceremonial use, which is absolute BS. When you consider the fact that they had mica chambers there that very few people talk about in Teotihuacan, those mica chambers more than likely created the mercury. So you're talking about an unknown culture or civilization that created Teotihuacan, that underground, they had the capability to create mercury over 1,000 years ago. And more than likely, they were using the mercury as a liquid bed to move heavy objects across Teotihuacan underground. So remember that the Aztec came 1,000 years later, but that a lot of this information has been passed down. The Aztec were really the Culua Mexica, and they immortalized the Toltec, and the Toltec obviously had a lot of connectivity to Teotihuacan. So, first off, I don't know anything about the gallium finds on Blind Frog Ranch. What I'm speaking to is from the scientific standpoint that if you understand the Aztec, one of the most important things to own or to have possession of would have been mirrors. And these mirrors were a way to access the other worlds or interdimensions, and not just during ceremonies, but the wealthy. If they had a mirror, it was like one of the most prized objects. Well, guess what gallium does for mirrors? It creates this lustrous look over a mirror. And just having seen yesterday's episode, if it really has any type of connectivity to the Culua Mexica, the Aztec, I would absolutely put that at the top of the list as to that property being from them. And then I think Bob also discussed another thing. Consider the fact that how are these placed into this stone, these rods of gallium? Well, another use of gallium, which has been used. I mean, you have to think about these megalithic structures, was that the gallium was capable of creating molds. And one of those uses would have been for rock production, would have been having molds to make rocks to fit what they need. So if, again, I don't have any connectivity with the creation of the show. Chris and I were independent studying for Duane on the ranch, but if it does have connection to Mesoamerican culture, it could be even farther back. I go into that in my presentations. These are two huge reasons for gallium being in possession by the Azteca.
James, I have to touch on this, and then I'm dying to hear some of your thoughts as well, Chris. You just blew my mind right now, as you do every time we speak. But you just brought up multiple other reasons that gallium could have massive value with these other cultures that we never thought about. So obviously, it was brought up on the show last night that gallium right now today could have value because of its conductivity, because of its use in high tech circuitry and things like that. But you brought up the potential of them using mercury for moving things. That's a physics situation there. So now you're talking about using it, the potential of using it in a scenario where you're using the physics compound and using it in a practical way. Then the mirrors, which of course that's huge, because only the elite or the higher upper echelon of the culture would have access to that. So that's value. There's just so many different things. And then the molds, good gosh, this is insane. Chris, please pipe in. There's some awesome stuff here.
I think James pretty much hit it on the head, with what he just said. That whole Uinta Basin has so much history, and there's so many different layers out there. It's unbelievable. Every time you go back out there, you find something new, and then it leads you to a different path, and then that leads you to a different path. And James has done a great job of kind of collecting all that data, and I was very lucky to be with him and kind of help document some of that data as well. But that whole Uinta Basin's got so much history that's still being discovered every day, and there's probably bigger discoveries out there, and hopefully we can be a part of that.
Well, and obviously Blind Frog Ranch is a big part of that, and they're actively looking for those types of discoveries. So Chris, in your time at Skinwalker Ranch, obviously same scenario. You were always running into things you couldn't explain, and that just you couldn't quite fit that puzzle together, right?
Right. Yeah. Skinwalker, just like Blind Frog, just like a lot of other places out there in the Uinta Basin, kind of hold that energy. I personally believe that native energy, frequency, and vibration is displaced, and history is displaced throughout that whole basin. It's not just one key location; it's the whole basin that's important. And the basin is it's bigger than a TV show. It's bigger than a documentary. It's bigger than my photography. It's bigger than people's opinions. It's real. The phenomena is real out there. The discoveries are real. It's funny how we view the high strangeness that goes on out there as the phenomena or the paranormal, when in reality, natives and the indigenous people just call it culture. It's a part of their culture.
Interesting.
But we view it as something entirely different, when in reality, it's a very simple approach to the subject.
Well, I think you have a really great point there. I think modern culture, we tend to have adopted, which is craziness, this whole, seeing is believing thing, which, is not true at all. I mean, everything from frequencies to chemicals to like you said, vibration there's about 50 million things that we can't measure with our eyeballs, right? That are happening on a daily basis in all sorts of places. And that leads to what I really love for you guys to be able to explain a little bit, and I know you can't possibly tell us everything, but Chris and James, you both went on Blind Frog Ranch for a good week and did your own investigations, finding all sorts of really fun and interesting things. Again, like you said, James, on your own, right? You went up there just because you were interested in what's going on in the basin. Tell us some of what you found. I mean, and if you can possibly, tell us why would, speaking specifically about the gallium find last night, why would they bore out, or how would they bore out and put it in a rock? I mean, that tells me that it's precious and they were hiding, and that maybe they needed to store it a certain way. But I'm not claiming I know. You guys and your investigations, I'm sure, revealed some interesting things. James, can you speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for everybody, the gallium took me totally by surprise last night. Duane and the rest of the crew do a very good job of keeping everything, non-disclosed as it should be, so that the television show, everyone gets to experience it at the same time. So it was a huge surprise for me, and immediately my thoughts were obviously the mirror. Just due to know, I mean, having studied Mesoamerican culture for so long. But I mean, Chris and I, when we were there, remember that there's this interconnectivity between the Uinta Mountains and the basin. It's not just, like Chris said, one spot. A lot of people always complain that, they say that they're neighbors, and yet it's 21 miles away. But you don't understand. Right. In the Uinta Basin, you go from reservation land to state-owned land to BL land to private land everywhere. Utah and Oklahoma are really one of the most difficult states to be able to interact with and do boots on the ground investigation, because you don't know if you're trespassing at any moment. And it's just interesting that I think the show is trying to explain the fact that, this is occurring to everyone there. And what Chris and I are trying to do when we're investigating it is, it's not just a need to know for Skinwalker Ranch and a need to know for Blind Frog Ranch, but I think that the people that live on the Uinta Basin have a right to know what's affecting them. One of our biggest things is, and Chris, Chris was on Skinwalker Ranch for 6+ years. He was part of Bass, part of Bigelow's team. He should be worried how the phenomena affected him. And there's this transient phenomena, which is radio frequency, electric frequency, EMF, that weirdly starts up north and then somehow moves its way through, sometimes affecting individuals in a negative manner. And I know I missed last week when Jim was on, Dr. Segala, and I was working on something very close to what he was doing, and come to find out at Phenomicon in September, he had already done it. So a lot of what I was working on was null and void at that point. All I can do is add to it. But we were trying to create some type of functional device that could be worn that can actually monitor all of this, because this is the Havana syndrome happening all over again on the basin. And whether it's a natural occurrence or military or other or private corporation, I think people have a right to know that. But we found some amazing stuff. We actually located an 1810 Spanish half real using several metal detection units. And I almost threw it away because I thought it was just a piece of worthless tin. And Chris stopped me and actually started cleaning it up. And he was like, hey, wait a minute. This has like I think he noticed the tail end of it first. And then he was like, this is a coin. So, I mean, sometimes even I screw up, and luckily I had him there, because that was a huge part to show this connection between Mesoamerica. Even though it was 1810, that was right when the Civil War broke out, and Mexico was trying to free itself from its oppressors. But it was an amazing find to be able to tie that. And I'm going to really let Chris go into the cultural site that he did a lot of excavation out and pulled out like 14 bones in a matter of 30 minutes and archaic arrowheads. But my one point that I want to make, on this site is, I know this was more than just a shelter, a cave shelter at some point. and maybe I better stop and not ruin what I think is below ground. I mean, we did GPR, we did 3D ground imaging, so we're a little bit more in the know from what those findings were as to what we believe is down there. But I'll let Chris. I'll turn that cultural side over to him, because it is one of the absolute most important parts of Blind Frog Ranch, not just from the gold seeking standpoint, but phenomena and distant past history that I believe occurred there.
Well, and if I may, Chris, I want to throw one at you along with that, because you're about to talk about, some of your findings. You found bones and all things like that. How does that play in with these cattle that they found there? And does that have anything to do with gallium? You've seen some of this kind of thing at Skinwalker. Can you give us that insight?
Well, oddly enough, during my time at Skinwalker, we didn't have any what you would consider like a typical A-class cattle mutilation situations. There was cows that went down, but mostly it was for normal causes or something like that.
Sure.
But who knows? Obviously, the ground, maybe the water sources are killing some of these cows. Maybe it's electricity or lightning or a combination of who knows what. It's such an interesting topic. But the artifacts like James was talking about, we found an area out there that's holds significant historical value, not just to that location, but the whole Uinta Basin. And that's kind of what my focus was on Skinwalker from probably April 2011 is when I found my first, good artifact on Skinwalker. And I was trying to map out, I had a topographical map where I would GPS artifact locations, and I was trying to connect maybe people's paranormal experiences to the artifacts, to an abundance of artifacts. And then when I found out and I got to explore more of the Uinta Basin from Blind Frog to McConkey Ranch to Dark Canyon to several places in the Uinta Basin, there's artifacts all over that whole Uinta Basin, and through those artifacts you can connect the relation with everything, because a lot of the artifacts date back to the Fremont area. So there's tons of history out there, and through the artifacts, you're able to kind of put pieces of that puzzle together. Like I said before, and like James has mentioned, there's so many different layers to that Uinta Basin, and my aspect, I focus mostly predominantly on the artifacts that I found on Skinwalker and everywhere else in the Uinta Basin.
Well, and can I ask, when you're finding these artifacts, did you experience anything anomalous? I mean, while on Blind Frog or on Skinwalker?
I don't know, but I feel like sometimes I was guided to find these things, because on Skinwalker Ranch, there was Nids and then the Shermans before that. And one of the older caretakers who was on the property, she had been there for 20 years. When I found my first arrowhead, I took it to her and I said, look at this, has anybody found anything like this out here? And she said, no. And then so at that point, I kind of viewed Skinwalker Ranch more as a crime scene, and I was more focused on what was below my feet. Obviously, I didn't spend too much time worrying about what's in the skies, because I can't control what's up there, but I can control what was on the ground. And so I kind of, at that point in 2011, I kind of was like, well, there's something here. Through the artifacts, there might be something else that can lead to a bigger picture, because it's almost in every native culture or indigenous culture, they talk about the star people, or people from the stars, and somehow it's just glossed over and ignored in today's society. It's like, no, it's pretty important that we dive into that and see what was going on.
So I've got an interesting question for you on that, because you were security, right?
Right.
As well. And so was your security predominantly focused on securing the spot from people or from something else? Because you've also been on Blind Frog Ranch, which we've had some security issues, right? What are your thoughts on the security there versus what you had to deal with before?
Well, I think it's primarily what my responsibility was for liability reasons, to keep people off the property so they wouldn't get hurt.
Right.
As far as security, I mean, it's impossible to secure that location, just like Blind Frog Ranch, because the area is so dynamic, and there's so many avenues of approach where people can access the property. It's I'll give my hat off to the current Skinwalker team now. They have an incredible camera system where people they can see you coming from everywhere. I wish I would have had something like that during my time out there,
Well,
but
and it's difficult.
It's very difficult to do that, but because I didn't have that, I had to do boots on the ground, which I think is very important. Having to be forced out into the environment at all times to secure the property, I had a pretty good routine down. And through that exposure of the environment and, investing your energy into the environment, I felt like the ranch opened up more. The more time I spent out there, the more layers are being pulled back. And sometimes I feel like I was being guided sometimes to find these artifacts,
I find it interesting the way you say that, because everyone I've spoken to, Chris, has said things in a similar way, to where the land is either fighting them or opening up to them, almost like it's its own entity, right? There is something to that. And James, I know you've spoken on, the cultural thoughts on, or the cultural perspective on the land actually being that live, entity working with you or against you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Remember that the indigenous people there, and this is recent where I've had to change a lot. We've always thought this was the Ute tribe, the Ute Native Americans, and it's really not. The Ute were really in Colorado and northwest New Mexico. What we're looking at are the Shoshone, specifically the Timpanogos tribe, the Snake Band, which, I mean, until maybe a couple months ago, I was really focused on the Ute, and shame on me for really not doing the amount of research I needed to do. But when you go back into this, the Utah Territory Indians were the Shoshone and the Paiute. So now that I've delved into their oral tradition, their cultural background, it's amazing the connectivity between the Fremont culture, that we don't know who they are. I 100% guarantee you I know who they became, which are the Aztec, as they moved northward and migrated down into Tenochtitlan. Well, they created Tenochtitlan, but what's currently Mexico City. But we also have this even older desert archaic people that we know as the Barrier Canyon style culture, where their anthropomorphic and zoomorphic figures in their petroglyphs and pictographs, I mean, they look like they're from out of this world or interdimensional or artificial intelligence. So there very well could be, I don't know. When we talk about the land being alive, are we really talking about nature being alive? Or are we discussing some type of interconnectivity, maybe below ground with another race or species unknown to us, or maybe past technology that could even be more advanced that's still there in that location when we're talking about the Uinta Mountains? And my whole research is posed towards there having been giants here. I can show you that giants existed in this area through the petroglyphs, especially at Dry Fork Canyon, which many people know as McConkey Ranch, artifacts that have been found, and oral tradition now, not just from the Ute, but from the Shoshone and the Paiute, and the Paiutes having battled the Site-Ka, which supposedly were the red-headed cannibal giants, and ending them in Lovelock, Nevada. So yeah, I think the area is alive. Do I necessarily believe it's nature alive? I don't know. I think what I have to do is be more open, like Chris is, to the fact that the Native Americans somehow have this connection that goes past what we're capable of seeing and understanding and hearing, that for them is no big deal. It's just their history and their way of life.
Well, to Chris's point, it wasn't seen as, paranormal, abnormal, anomalous. It was just seen as culture, right?
Right.
And that's an interesting thing to note. I'm privy to a lot of the information, James, that you've shared with people, but I want to probe you to talk a little bit about something I've heard you speak about before, specifically within those pictograms and the native artwork that you've seen. You mentioned something in one of your presentations about what you're not seeing and how important that is. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what a lot of people fail to see when they're looking at is what's missing. And what's missing from the petroglyphs and the pictographs from the Fremont culture and the Barrier Canyon style culture, San Juan River culture, which was ancestral Pueblo and desert archaic people. So you're talking about missing from about 12 or 1300 AD all the way back to about 2800 years ago. And daily life is missing. There's very rarely any maize or corn being shown. There's no living quarters, no hogan. They're missing the hunt. There's very few archaic hunts, missing just the normal scenery and interaction. And why is that? Because everyone else, all the other cultures, all the other Native Americans, that's what they put into their artifacts and their scenes on rock art, but it's not here. And I'm talking about maybe only 5% or less daily life. And then you have this 95% of these figures that are tall, great stature, 6 fingers, 6 digits on each hand, huge feet. You have these objects that are seen flying through the air that everybody's looking up at, or that the animals, these zoomorphic figures, are startled from as it's coming down and running away from. And then you have this AI looking technology advancing out in the Moab area up to 9 Mile Canyon, up to the Uintah Basin from 2,000 years ago. And you got to ask yourself, what the hell were they looking at, or what was going on here that it was this necessary to document and say screw everything else that we should be putting here? It's not there.
It massively speaks to the importance of it within their culture, right? And Chris, you relate to this. I mean, you've got your photography thing. You know that when you're trying to capture things, you're trying to tell a story. These people felt so impressed to tell the story of these things as opposed to daily life. There must have been a reason, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they've had to experience something pretty amazing to document the best they could, And when I first met James, he talked about the giants and his theories, and at first I was like, I wasn't tracking. And then after spending a couple of days with him and following the evidence that he was showing me, it was like I was blown away. He's got an amazing amount of knowledge when it comes to that subject, and it was just a real eye opener spending time with him and getting to kind of jump down that rabbit hole.
Well, and you guys got to spend some good time together, and even out at Blind Frog Ranch. So I want to talk about that for a second. You guys got to work with Duane. What do you think of Duane? Great guy, right?
He's awesome.
Great guy.
He's a great guy.
Absolutely.
Well, and his just integrity, his genuine nature to wanting to get to the bottom of things is just relentless, and that's actually how this whole show came about.
Yeah.
And that's actually why he let you guys come on and study his land, right?
Yeah. When I first met Duane, I asked him, I was like, "Do you mind if I photograph your property?" And he says, "Tell the story." He goes, "I don't care if you live stream it." And then in the course of that week, I took over 4,000 images of that property. I'm still to this day going through that archive and finding stuff that I missed through those images. And then I went back out in December with the associate director of the University of Maryland, Taras Matla, who helped organize my art exhibit for Skinwalker. And we spent some time on Blind Frog, and I took another 1,000 pictures out there. So I'm still going back and finding images that I can't wait to share with other people too, to see, because it's so beautiful. That whole Uintah Basin, for me personally, is I love going out there and photographing that property. I feel so soul-bound to that area.
Yeah, I agree. And James, again, same thing with Duane. He's been so gracious to you and letting you do some research, and you've done a ton of research on that land, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent, I think, closer to a month originally with Duane and Chad for a little over a week, and then by myself or with Duane, and then with Chris Bartell for a full week over the course of several years. So you got to remember that I was out there before they even had a concept of making a show. And, you know, Duane doesn't care how you get the story out, just as long as you get the story out. And what a lot of people fail to know is there's a lot more to the story. And my objective for Blind Frog Ranch is twofold. There is a treasure in or around the property. Some of the technology that I have, and I've shown Chris this, we've had hits for over 100+ pounds of gold, whether that be bullion that's already been created and smelted, or raw, or I don't know yet. And we're going to work on that this coming summer. You know, right now there's probably like 6 feet of snow out there, so there's no way to do it. But and then the other thing is, a lot of people are missing the fact that the Uinta Mountains, and that's what I'm trying to show in my presentations and my research, this had to be an ancient location where people survived a major catastrophic event. It became origin for a lot of Native Americans, meaning this is where they came up out of the ground and started all over again. So what historical data is on that property or around it is more important than any amount of gold, because maybe it's going to tell us who we are as the human race, or who our ancestors are, or how we were created, if we were created, who the gods were. And for me, and I know for Chris, we've discussed this, I'd give up a million bars of gold to have, you know, that information and that historical data that's somewhere. And I would absolutely treat it the way it should be, because it's not just for the Native Americans, the indigenous people of North America, but I feel it's for everyone, because what that's going to do is rewrite history the way it should be, with the proper information, whether that's been held back from us on purpose or lost because of catastrophic events and just time continuing on. You know, that it's the way it is. It's the nature of the beast. But that's my twofold. And Duane and Chad have been nothing but righteous in allowing that to take place. And I mean, Chris, I think, was a little surprised when we went underground so often, and what we saw underground just blew our minds away. I mean, an underground sump, which is really a lake underground, you know, that's 0.27 miles in length, is unreal. And that was just one area in the Uinta Mountains. I've shown that there's an underground system running under Bottle Hollow Reservoir, under the reservation, all the way under the mesa that Skinwalker Ridge is connected to. So, I mean, wait until we get down there, because I think a lot of this phenomena is due to what's there.
It's absolutely amazing. And you know, my hat off to you guys. You're so dedicated to your research. My hat off to Duane and Chad for their generosity and their endless pursuit, you know, just like you guys, to, you know, finding out what we don't know and making it available to people. And also, I mean, even to of course, Discovery and the production team at Karga, they're all doing a really great job of trying to get to the bottom of some really cool things that people should know. Now, with that, I do have to touch on, because fans are constantly asking. It's so hard for a weekly show to give all the information that everybody wants each time. Obviously, there's, you know, they're investigating that one woman that showed up that unfortunately is passed away, whether it be, you know, a murder, suicide, whatever it may be. They didn't cover much on that this show, if any. I'm sure they'll get to it. We don't have any more knowledge than you guys do. We're gonna attack the information as it comes. But just to spend some time with you guys today on all of the things that are happening, legitimate, scientific and otherwise, on these properties and up there, and you know, Duane's, you know, hospitality and pursuit to helping everybody get access to this truth is phenomenal. And Chris, your work is amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. Your photography is just beyond compare. It's just so cool.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate your time. Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Very good. And James, listen, there's no way I can give you enough time to give all of your information to everybody, but I absolutely appreciate you sharing. We're getting really awesome shout outs from everybody online, people that know you and people that don't, about how awesome the information the both of you brought to us today was. So are there any final things that you want to give people to think about, maybe about, and again, just, what we just saw on the show last night was a curveball. Nobody thought about gallium, nobody thought about something like that. So any final thoughts you guys have for people to think about as we wait for next week's episode?
There's one thing I want to say is, again, I don't know what is going to be on the show. We did our research independently, but I absolutely got to stress the point that Blind Frog Ranch is an extremely important site. Left field away from the mystery of Blind Frog Ranch, they've afforded everyone the opportunity to at least partake in some of what we're attempting to find out, whether they agree with how it's done or not. Just being afforded that opportunity to see the ranch, or even through the outpost, you can actually go and experience it yourself and feel what everybody else feels, but it's for real. There is historical data there that needs to be collected, and we have the right tools available with us now that can do that without intruding into the ground, and then maybe finding those spots that we do need to delve into deeper underground. But the history needs to be collected there, and I promise you there is some type of treasure, whether it be gold or more than just gold, in and around that area. And it's just a matter of following the breadcrumbs to the right location. And Chris, am I wrong on that?
You're 100% spot on. I was about to say the same thing. So my only advice is the people that want to go out to the Uinta Basin and see that beautiful area, just know that, tread lightly, be respectful of the land and the people out there, and the land will respect you back.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Chris. That's a very good point. And I love that you guys are bearing your all on this, because, of course, when something's on television, there's criticism. People are like, oh, is it real? Oh, is it fake? Oh, is this staged? Oh, is this, listen, here's the one thing that we all know, at least the three of us that are on here, and many others that we work with and know. There is massive legitimacy to the land, to what it has, what it holds. We don't know all the answers to it yet. And however it's depicted online, or how it's perceived on TV, or whatever the case may be, doesn't change the fact that, Duane's legitimate in his pursuit. He's, highly respectable. You guys are legitimate in your pursuit. You're highly respectable. And everyone that's been on at least this conversation show, and everyone that I've met throughout this whole journey, the real trip here is the journey itself of finding information that wasn't readily available before, and we're exploring together. And that is so awesome in this day and age. I love it.
I agree.
Yeah. So with that, guys, we're going to have to sign off. I want to remind everybody at home, we so appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for your support, whether it be for the show itself. Discovery, I know, appreciates everybody. The rankings have been great. Everybody's really turned out to join the show. That's fantastic. Same thing with us here at Blind Frog Ranch Outpost. We appreciate all the support. I'm going to take 1 second to bring up the actual promotion that we're doing right now. Everybody, if you haven't grabbed a pint glass, grab a pint glass. Know that Duane's favorite beer is Blue Moon, so you might want to make that the first thing you put in that pint glass, but go grab one with 15% off coupon. Use Blue Moon Pint as the checkout coupon code, and you'll get that. And with that, guys, I have to say goodbye for this week. Next week, I don't think there's an episode next week, so we may or may not be able to join you online next week, but we will be having one of these after each show to recap what we've got going on the actual show. and then, of course, bring you some good information like we had today. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for everything. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
All right, everyone, sign out. See you later.